on as our moderator. He's our director of marketing. And we're going to be talking about cloud hosted access control from that small to medium business all the way up to enterprise, and why the right cloud product really addresses both that SMB market and the enterprise space, even though enterprise does mean different things to different people. So some of the couple of the key points I just wanted to talk about, I'm really going to try to be covering, and I know I mentioned that in my 1-minute intro video, if anyone watched that. But really just how the technology provides that solid base to build on to address some of those things, how it solves business continuity problems, cybersecurity, how cloud can improve downtime, upgrade problems, and really just make it more of an accessible solution no matter where you happen to be. We'll talk about some of the standards that are out there and how they help enterprise deployments in the cloud. And then last but not least, we'll talk about some of the economic drivers, the return on investment or total cost of ownership that have really been driving the overall market to software as a service or cloud hosted solutions. And I mean, you don't need to look any farther than your mobile phone, your TV viewing habits, streaming services, and just the fact that Convergint itself, you've probably done solutions for a lot of cloud-based companies, data center projects, because that's really where the market's been going for the last 15 years in the overall IT space. But what we're hoping is that you come away from the session with the understanding and confidence to talk to different customers about sort of the underlying themes and be able to position hosted access control or access control as a service to your customers, no matter how small or how large that they are. Cool thing to know, actually, Convergint is one of our partners. We introduced you on a job. It's the first stage of the deployment's 4,000 readers, and Convergent's doing a part of that. So, we are working with the very large customers out there today. And before I go too far, I think it behooves me to really talk about what actual definition of cloud is, according to NIST, because I hear so many people say, "Oh, well, the solution we have is browser-based or web-based," and when it really just means, yeah, you have a browser, but you still have a server or an appliance on site, and it's nothing like the cloud. Or, it's hosted someplace. And again, hosted doesn't mean that it's cloud. So really what you look at is, some of the key terms are on demand, a shared pool of resources. And if you use Netflix or Hulu, those companies don't basically say, hey, what's the peak load that we have? And you look at probably TV viewing habits. If we looked across North America, 8 o'clock would be that prime time. They don't scale their system and run those servers for that 8 o'clock viewing audience. They scale up and they scale down. They bring on resources as needed. Because if they always paid for all the servers that they needed at peak load, it'd be really, really expensive. So again, so part of that's that on-demand shared pool of resources. And that's exactly what Feenics does. In the access control world, what are your busiest times? Typically around 8 in the morning, any sort of shift change where people are coming and going, where you've scheduled reports to land on your, in your inbox at 8 a.m. So you're running reports, people are logging in, people are badging in, and we auto scale to address those peak times to make sure we're providing a great level of service to our customers and to our, whether or not it's your end customer or it's Convergint as our customer. And then the other key things, that minimal management effort, that it's all automated. That, if our team's sleeping, that these things just happen automatically. You don't need our interaction. That's really what we build on, and we are a true cloud product at Feenics. So some of the other themes and what makes cloud great, again, whether or not it's access control as a service, it's video as a service, or it's Microsoft Office 365, it's Salesforce.com, it's PayPal, it's Venmo. And when you talk about convenience, sometimes the mistake we make is just I can use it from my mobile phone. Yeah, and then that's quintessential convenience this day and age. But it also means a lot more. Hey, upgrades are automatically done. I didn't have to configure cybersecurity settings. I don't have to worry about web servers on business continuity, failover, upgrades. All of that stuff is built into that convenience factor we talk about when using software as a service. Of course, mobile also being a big piece, but mobile not just meaning your phone, but whether or not it's your desktop or your laptop, but from any network anywhere in the world, you can connect securely. Um, and then, of course, when you are in the cloud, and you think about whether or not you're doing your online banking, your e-filing, your taxes, you're sending an email. Cybersecurity is critical. When we look at any of those, using PayPal or Venmo, you didn't have to go, Convergint doesn't have to go, or you as an individual consumer, you don't have to go buy an encryption certificate and set up all of those things. That's the default state. Cybersecurity is taken care of by the manufacturer, as it should be. We shouldn't be saying, hey, Convergint, it's cyber secure if you do this huge hardening guide, because that would be a really terrible model in the cloud. Cybersecurity is our responsibility. It really is everyone's, but we have to own it when we put the onus on it. And those sort of themes are key, again, from both this SMB space, that small, medium business enterprise, all the way up to customers that are 500, 1,000, 10,000 card readers. Obviously, when you get into the bigger ones, redundancy and failover, those business continuity processes become much more important. You don't want, just because your headquarters is in, say, in Chicago or in Schaumburg, if you have some sort of network outage there, you don't want to take all of your sites offline. That's one of the great things about cloud, is it addresses that. There's lots of redundancy built in. If the manufacturer does it right, that's something I think that we do, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. But then scalable. If you look at the traditional premise model, every time you started growing, you had to change operating systems, you had to change databases, there's all this other licensing. At least in the Feenics cloud model, you can start with one reader and end up with 10,000 readers, and there's no software changes or licensing changes that Convergint and the customer would have to make. You just add readers as you need. And actually, I'm working with a great customer right now. It's 600 card readers that they just converted over, but all of a sudden they're closing a facility and moving states. So they're taking 100 readers off of that. So we address it in a license, and then as they move up, as they scale up someplace else, we'll just slowly add it back. But they're only paying for what they use. And of course, in the cloud, that upgrade process is transparent. So some of that other underlying technology, we're not reinventing the wheel, whether or not it's auto scaling, it's load balancing, it's protecting the infrastructure, it's sending Convergint technicians text messages or email notifications if there's a controller problem. We're building on AWS enterprise class services that some of the largest organizations in the world build on. So these just happen to be a few of I'd say it's 80% of the ones that we use. But again, whether or not it's protecting our infrastructure, it's running our infrastructure, it's notifying you, we're building an AWS enterprise class services. So in the background, when I talk about all of that infrastructure, all of that redundancy, in the United States, every single Mercury controller talks to the same web address, just like if we all go to Facebook or Google or Hulu or Netflix, we're going to one web address and we're getting load balanced the servers with the most available resources automatically. You'll never know unless you go do a trace route and you're really techy and kind of figure out the final endpoint. We're doing that where our Mercury panels talk. We're doing that where you log in, where your customers log in and consume the product. We're doing that at the database layer. And then we take all those things on this slide and we distribute it through multiple availability zones in AWS. And in the diagram up in the upper right corner, those availability zones are from one to many data centers. So Feenics distributes in a minimum of 3 availability zones. So even if you're 2 card readers, each time you swipe a card or a credential, mobile key fob at one of those readers, that transaction is being written to a minimum of 3 different locations at the same time. So one of those AZs, and again, each of those availability zones has independent power, multiple connected to multiple power grids, multiple ISPs, internet service providers. Now the ultimate in redundancy. So again, if one of them gets knocked off the face of the earth, your 2 card reader system is running in other locations, just like your 20,000 card reader system. So those are all those things that we just do by default for all customers. But really, our goals are that consistent performance, predictable behavior, and reliable results for all customers. Oh, I see. Let's see. Is there a redundant feature included in and implementation. So, for that question, yes, obviously this infrastructure is provided for all customers. So every single Convergint customer is running in that same redundant, load balanced auto scaling infrastructure. So the service is this service is NIST compliant. So we would follow the NIST guidelines for cloud, or basically that NIST definition of what cloud computing is. I haven't seen a certification process, like an official cert or something like that. I see a lot of their guidelines and publications, but again, I haven't seen a specific certification for it. So just some other benefits to customers that I historically overlooked, even working at Feenics, but things just like database optimization. Our team's always tuning those things. So if we notice certain searches are getting run all the time, we can write new indexes to provide better experiences, faster reports. We do a lot of work in the background, and it's something. I had an interesting question from a prospective customer who has a very, very large on-premise deployment today. And they kept asking me, well, what are your bottlenecks? We need to know about your bottlenecks. And I had to tell them, like, I understand in your solution, as you grew, as you scaled, and you ran into these bottlenecks, the manufacturer always told you just add more servers, and it'll fix it. And that premise, that direction isn't tenable in the cloud. If we did that, our cost would be outrageous. So we are constantly looking for more efficient ways, new protocols, and our teams implement that automatically. We made a transition from Windows to Linux, not because it was cheaper, that certainly was a great part of it, but because we could auto scale servers 9 times faster. So if you look at something like a distributed denial of service attack, a DDoS attack, or again, it's just some customer all of a sudden consuming tons of resources, we can add new servers without ever touching anything, just 9 times faster now automatically. And of course, the update piece. And I talk about that a lot because sometimes I've gone into customers and like, oh, well, we have to be on premise because we can't have any downtime. Very emphatic about it. And then I'll ask them, well, how do you do an upgrade? Well, the integrator comes in, they take our stuff offline, and then they update Windows and they update, SQL or Postgres or whoever the database engine is. And then they update the application and they slowly bring everything back online and go, oh, so you have downtime. It's like in the cloud, we do active updates. We're upgrading your system while you're using it because of all that load balance, and we just bring in more servers. So our goal is zero planned downtime. So, other things I like to talk to on that technology piece were built on MERCURY as well. On the hardware side, we really want to be an open product. I've been in access control now 18 years. That's something I've always personally felt very strongly about. Customers should have choice. If they're not happy, they should be able to leverage what they've paid for and choose a new solutions provider. We're an AWS Select Technology partner. You can certainly go and look at all these things on the web and independently verify. Veracode, something we do static and dynamic code analysis every week as part of an automated process. And what that really means is this product scans our code every week for nothing but cybersecurity vulnerabilities. Then we do an annual pen test with a company called Security Innovations, because we want that to be independent. We want it to be third party. We want to be able to provide you with those non-biased reports if we need to. Let's see. Checking to see if I have any questions. I think I have other questions so far. And just on top of that, some of the other cybersecurity vulnerabilities we get rid of. We have no default passwords. The number of times I've had to help someone convert and hey, we can't get into this system. And I just say, try this password. And in an integrator, someone's mystified on how I knew what it was, but all I did was go on Google, look up someone's documentation, and a default password hadn't been changed in 10 years. I've seen this multiple times. It's kind of scary sometimes. No direct database access. Everything has to authenticate through the API. And then everything is encrypted in transit and at rest automatically. Again, Feenics takes care of that. But yeah, again, cybersecurity in the cloud, it's not an option. It's a must. Even down to process security. So on that, the people in the process, we have there's a very small number of people at Feenics who have back-end access, and even they go through a government secret clearance. There's specific machines that are whitelisted. They have to use multi-factor authentication. course, there's some other highly publicized events where company was breached because they weren't using multi-factor and they posted passwords. So those are some of the basics that we want to make sure we're doing. We protect the entire environment with a VPC, a virtual private cloud. We segregate things into separate security groups. We use a web application firewall to block malicious IPs. We're trying to do everything we can to protect customer data, your customers' information. Now, I've had to go through a number of InfoSec reviews with different companies, and it was a lot of that. I could talk about the technology, but I really learned a lot talking to some of those InfoSec teams about the process, about people. And I learned a lot about my own company, about Feenics through that. Even all the things we do on the back end go to an AWS product called CloudTrail. That's the immutable audit log. So someone can go and check what did the individual Feenics users do? Do they have separate accounts for dev, separate for prod, for QA? And those things that we take very seriously. And there's always, in cybersecurity, is always a game of cat and mouse. So there'll always be things that we can do better. I don't think there's no company out there claim to be perfect when it comes to cybersecurity. But yeah, we're always looking for what can we do better? What's the next thing? When I look at Veracode, when I started at Feenics, we introduced that third-party cybersecurity code scanning. It was a yearly process, and then when it became a quarterly process, we moved to monthly, and we moved to weekly because we've just seen how the threat vectors change so fast in the cybersecurity space. So they update those libraries. We want to be scanning for the latest threats. Again, it's something we're always looking for ways to do it better. And we've had customers who have done independent cybersecurity checks as well. That's something we actually encourage. We've done it with a couple of large opportunities and ones that became customers. So if you ever run across it, I know sometimes in that premise world, there's a lot of hesitancy around that. And in our world, at least from the Feenics perspective, like customer wants to do an independent cybersecurity test, we're all for that. Obviously, as long as they share if they find a vulnerability, that's pretty much the only thing we really stipulate. Because it helps all of our customers, helps protect all of them. So on the standards side, this certainly isn't any sort of comprehensive list because I had 30 minutes to fit it all into. But a couple of the bigger themes we're seeing, at least in the cloud and authentication side or IAM, single sign-on, we certainly follow some standards there. I'll talk a little bit more about. Now, you'll see MFA be used as an acronym, or TFA, so multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication. For using one-time passwords, that code that gets sent to your phone, whether or not it's a text message, whether or not it's you're using an app-based authenticator, which are more secure. Feenics follows this RFC 6238. Something you'll probably never hear. I always have to go look it up and write it down. But it's the Internet Engineering Task Force. That's their protocol for two-factor and multi-factor. So that means I guess what it means to most people, if you're using Duo, if you're using LastPass, Google Authenticator, you can use those products with Feenics. You just go and write in the user interface, scan a code. You've now linked your MFA or TFA product to Feenics or Keep for that login. So of course, we have all sorts of password policies that you can enforce. We're actually looking at rolling out making multi-factor mandatory for all of our partners. So like Convergint, so any tech who logged in would actually be forced to use multi-factor authentication. Because what we really look at is like, how do we lower the risk profile for all customers? And that's one of the ways we can do that. And I haven't been in any Convergint offices where there's usernames and passwords on the whiteboard, but I've been in integrator offices that have that. That's just a huge risk. On the hardware side, we're MERCURY encryption, the latest TLS or latest internet encryption standards. We have a full REST API. And the reason I bring that up is REST is certainly a common standard today. But when I say full, it means every line of code, every action in our user interface is available through the API. So we've had a couple of integrators that, you know what? They realize they can add hardware through the API. They can go right from a CAD drawing, if they have the right products and the right information in their CAD, and import that into Feenics. Basically program all their readers and interface modules and panels from their CAD program because it's available in the API to add hardware. Really go from design to the production stage, streamline their value proposition or their value streams, just shorten them and just make it more efficient. And then on the reader side, we don't do any proprietary readers. We follow pretty much, or we're compliant with pretty much every reader standard out there. Of course, Wiegand and OSDP being 99% of the market. So on the single sign-on piece, you'll see SAML or SAML 2.0. That's the protocol that we follow, that we're compliant with, and a lot of the major single sign-on products like Okta or Azure AD, they follow that protocol. So these are just a few of the single sign-on products. If you use those, for Okta, for example, you have your little Okta or Feenics tile there. You click on that and automatically logs you into whether or not you're using our mobile app, browser interface, or our Evergreen app. On the mobile side, of course, as I mentioned, any OSDP or Wiegand compatible reader is going to work with us. So, even if you're using Farpoint, which doesn't have a real issuance process, their mobile credentials are going to work with us. But where we are integrating so far, HID Origo, their platform, we were the first partner, HID partner to write integration to that. So I can go into Keep, our product, click on add Jeff as a user or as a cardholder, click issue mobile credential, and send that over to the HID portal. So it's just automated. Add and remove him from our application and just push it to HID automatically. Proxy finished up their integration to us. The same thing. If I add Jeff as a person and as a cardholder in Feenics, automatically send that to Proxy so he gets it on his app on his phone, and his phone works. And Wavelinks, actually, this one is in process today, so that should be done very shortly. And what I like is we've really looked at 3 different models. HID, of course, being the 800-pound gorilla in the room. They charge per credential per year, which is great. For Convergint, for Feenics, we can all make recurring revenue on selling that credential. Where that's not tenable with a customer, Wavelinks is awesome. They say there's enough money for them in readers. They don't charge for a mobile credential, which is certainly a departure, but that helps us be compatible with others, competitive against others who aren't charging as well. And you'll see that more in the proprietary space where they're trying to get all of their hardware in there, lock a customer in. Wavelinks has a great value prop there. And then Proxy charges per reader per year. So if you have a lot of people and a few readers, again, just looking at it from an economic standpoint, then Proxy has a great value there. They do some pretty cool things too. MERCURY. I'd say if there's anyone from Convergint on this call who isn't familiar with MERCURY, this must be your first day in access control, but there's now 30 different MERCURY partners out there. Feenics is a platinum partner with them. Knock on wood, we'll be a platinum elite partner this year based on some of our growth. But we pretty much work with everything they have out there. EP and LP, their green controllers and their red controllers. Even their Series 1 downstream, or what they call their SIOs, their MR50s and 52s. Those things can be 20 years old and they'll work with Feenics. They'll work with our product. We wrote to their bilingual DLL so we can take over ProWatch panels with no firmware chip changes or any of that stuff. We just talk to them natively. And then, of course, the bridge boards are becoming less common, at least for the M5, for the old GE, CASI, the facility commander picture perfect replacements, because a lot of those have been done now since that product's been dead for almost a decade. But we still stumble across some here and there. But yeah, we really want to support that full suite of what MERCURY offers. They are the gold standard for an access control panel, and we feel really strongly about working with open partners. And kind of last theme really on the economics, and the other thing I'd like to talk about is customer characteristics. There isn't a specific vertical market that we work in. It's really a broad spectrum of customers. We've done critical infrastructure, hydroelectric, financial organizations, pharmaceuticals. I think Mallinckrodt was a customer we brought to Convergint, a big pharmaceutical company that you guys are now doing for us. But yeah, really a broad spectrum of customers. It's more about the persona of the IT and security departments, though. They're already using Office 365. They use Salesforce.com. There's so many cloud products out there. That type of department doesn't want a server for security. They don't want to be box fixers. They really want to maximize value to the organization, focus on the systems that keep the lights running for the business. Look at, at Convergint. What are your critical systems to driving revenue and customer satisfaction? That's where IT is going to spend most of their time. But if you run into an IT department that thinks job security revolves around how many servers they can hug, not a great Feenics customer, I would say. A lot of on-prem products for them. And I sat in on the call yesterday that Eric, you and I hosted with Forrester. And I just thought this was interesting. So I'm stealing this slide only for Convergint since can't use it anywhere else. But within that IoT, remember, Internet of Things, communicating out over the internet, which we do, you see that broad spectrum of customers here in the security and surveillance, from government to retail, high tech, et cetera. So yeah, just wanted to highlight that. I thought that was pretty cool when I was sitting in on that. Kind of getting towards the end, so try to wrap it up. The other trends, the big trends that we notice, we aren't going to compete with the DIY space. If someone wants to go buy a Schlage lock from Home Depot and call it access control, we're not going to be that cost effective. That's not a Convergint customer. The ADI or the Annexter Special, we don't really compete with those because they're dirt cheap. We're a MERCURY panel, so we're going to be, priced above that. So we start is they want a little bit more out of an access. They want true access control and security, and not just lock management. We start to provide a lot more value. But then you get to someone who might have several hundred to 1,000 card readers, but they're still running Windows Server 2012 R2. They haven't done an update. They haven't done backups in years. They're keyless, they're glorified keyless entry. They don't really care about security. They just want a key card. That's not a Feenics customer either, because we're going to be much too expensive for them. But then you get in those more sophisticated organizations that have the business continuity models. They need distributed architectures. They've got offices all around the world, and they want to be able to communicate effectively, not have to worry about networks and things like that. That's where we really start to shine again. They want APIs. They want to be able to customize storage. They want to use BI tools. They want to take stream events out using MQTT to their analytics engines, like Power BI or Snowflake, Splunk or Tableau. Some of those are Feenics customers. And we provide a lot of value to them. So yeah, the donut hole is always, that unaddressable customer in the middle. That's why you carry a lot of products, though. You've got a different solution for customers with diverse needs. So coming on about 2 minutes, a little bit more on the economics. The really basic mistake that I see people make is they compare the cost of the software upgrade or software support plan, SSA, SUSP, to the cost of a subscription service in the cloud. And it looks like the cloud is a lot more expensive, but you have to take into consideration all of the back-end support, the server infrastructure, the upgrades, downtime, operations, just people to run it. And if you don't do that, yeah, cloud does look more expensive. But if you think about what are the overall trends in the market, it's going cloud. So just a little bit more math here that says, hey, if you spend $2,500 on a server, it's more like spending $8,000 over the course of a year. And just all of these other things to own it. And you get into these conversations with finance and IT, and sometimes they really start to appreciate that additional information. I think that was that was really helpful early on in my career on the cloud side. But now I think more of this is becoming common knowledge. But it's also that opportunity cost. If you're fixing boxes, what else could you be doing? Can you be providing more value to the organization? We see that theme a lot. Should security be, maintaining software and doing upgrades and backups, or should they be figuring out how can they leverage the technology that they've purchased from Convergint to better serve and keep their organization safe, provide better insight into what's happening there, whether it's trend analysis, it's security, et cetera. But again, that's that opportunity cost piece. I think we're just running up to my my amount of allotted time, so I don't see any other questions in here. But please, if anyone does have any questions that you want to ask, pass them in. Jeff can send them to me with um, any time that we have. In case anyone's doing that right now, I appreciate your time. Hopefully your attention. I can't actually see any of you, so I don't know if you're sleeping or not, but I appreciate you listening in to Jeff and I, and any questions, anything we can do to help you. On the Feenics side, please feel free to reach out to any or all of us. We're happy to help and continue the conversation. Thank you. All right, 1:30. So I'm assuming our stream's cut off.